Since 2007, a group of like-minded cyclists got together and decided to start an initiative that would encourage Winnipeggers to hop on their bikes and ride to work instead of driving. Out of that enterprise came Bike to Work Day. Since the massive success of the event, it has grown, and in 2014, the event was expanded to include a whole week of celebrations, and with that, Bike Week Winnipeg was born. This year's Bike Week kicked off on Sunday and goes until Saturday, June 15th, encouraging more Winnipeggers to bike more often. This is a fantastic reason to get out, enjoy the sunshine and warm weather, and explore Winnipeg while on the bike. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about all things cycling and Bike Week, I am joined by Elmore, who is the board chair for Bike Week.
Thanks for having me.
So you rode your bike here to the station. How was the ride?
It was fine. There are some gaps here getting from where I was, which was somewhere close to the legislature, to get here. But generally, I know my route. I've ridden around the city a lot, so I tend to have a pretty good idea of how to get places.
I want to start things out sort of back at the beginning. You were one of the founders of Bike for the Future, which is now known as Bike Winnipeg. Why did that first group of cyclists back in the day feel the need to start Bike Winnipeg? And can you talk about some of the goals and aims of the organization?
Well, I think where this all sort of grew out of was actually critical mass. Mm-hmm. Now, critical mass is a ride that still takes place on Fridays and at the end of the month, the last Friday of the month, and it's just a group of cyclists sort of riding around. But when this all began way back, it was a group of us got together and thought, well, we're going to have to do something different if we're going to actually connect with the city and get them to make cycling safer, build infrastructure. So that was really the reason behind the formation of Bike to the Future, and then its transition into Bike Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. And the goal really is, as an advocacy organization, to try and promote, try to push the city in the direction of creating a safe cycling network for people to be able to use. And of course, it's ultimately the same for Bike Week and for Bike Winnipeg in terms of get more butts on bikes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that is so great about Bike Winnipeg is that you lobby the government and people who have sway to create a city that is more bike friendly. Can you talk about how that is achieved? Do you simply email city councilors? How does that process work?
Well, there's a number of things that happen. Obviously, we try to continue to put pressure on the city, and we review their plans as they fall into place, and we look at what they're planning to do in terms of actually adding bike infrastructure to new programs, to new projects, new roads. And try to and we add our voice in terms of how we see that infrastructure being the safest possible for any individual or for people riding bikes.
Mm-hmm. Is that what the city's Active Transportation Advisory Committee does? Is that how that works?
The city's that particular committee, they provide advice to the city as well, and the executive director of Bike Winnipeg sits on that advisory committee. Okay. I ride my bike a lot, and I have to say there are some great bike paths around the city. It makes for a great way to see the city in a very different way. I know one of the goals of Bike Winnipeg is to connect the city so it's accessible to cyclists. How do you think that is going? Can you talk about some of the places where you think you'd like to see more bike paths? Well, I'm not sure I could zero in on specifics, because there are quite a few gaps in the city's infrastructure. We are making progress, and we've certainly made a lot of progress, in the last number of years. But in order for us to actually connect the network and create something in terms of infrastructure that would, let's say, move more people to riding bikes outside of the sort of recreational rider, to actually get them using their bikes more often for more things, we're going to have to create that connection, and we still have a fair ways to go.
Yeah. I'm just speaking for myself on the bike paths. Yeah, there's huge swaths where there's nothing, and you're forced to sort of ride on the sidewalk if you want to be safe. Mm-hmm. Biking has been in the news recently. Speaking of safety, with that tragedy that happened on Wellington Crescent, can you talk about some of the things cyclists should do for their safety to be better seen by cars? And what are some things that drivers can do to ensure that the roads are safe for both bikes and cars?
Well, I think, I'd like to address the driver aspect in this particular case, because in this particular incident, it really was the driver who was at fault in terms of this situation. They were, according to the news thus far, they were driving erratically and speeding. So in terms of how drivers can better act on the roads or better cooperate on the roads, it really is about, and it is really about cooperation, and it's about giving people on bikes space and slowing down a little bit. Those are the kinds of things that I think can make it much more, much safer for people on bikes. But the other thing that we have to really talk about is infrastructure. And a lot of our roads out there are, let's call it, built for speed. Yeah. They're wide, the lanes are wide, and so they encourage people to actually drive fast. And Wellington Crescent, where this happened, is exactly that. It's wide, and it just encourages people to speed. And so the city needs to look at that and start adopting what they call Vision Zero, and trying to build infrastructure around making it safe for everyone. And that still has to happen. In terms of people on bikes, as a cycling educator, one of the key things I always tell people is communicate, signal. A lot of people don't signal. They also don't necessarily pay attention to what's coming up behind them. So signals, like communicating with other road users, whether they be drivers or otherwise, is important. You need to be able to tell them where you're going, what you want to do. And most often I find that when I communicate, people will, in fact, let me do what I want to do. Yeah. So that's one of the key things that I think it really makes a big difference. The other one that is really important is visibility. Now, most people would say, well, I have visibility. Well, I wear a bright vest, or I wear this. The visibility in terms of those clothing is only one aspect of visibility. The other aspect of visibility is a matter of you staying in the driver's field of vision. So you want to avoid weaving in and out. You want to maintain a very straight line when you're riding, and you want to give yourself room so that you do not have to bob and weave all over the place. So, for instance, riding on a street, you should maintain at least a meter away from the edge of the road. Passing parked cars, you need to stay outside the door zone. So that's 1.5 meters or more. Yeah. So again, it's maintaining a consistent, clean line so that drivers always know where you are and can see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this week, I should say, is Bike Week. Why did Bike Winnipeg feel the need to create a week for this?
Well, in actual fact, when we go all the way back to Bike to Work Day, it was really a number of us from Bike to the Future that sort of started this whole thing of the whole idea of a Bike to Work Day. But it since has really transitioned to its own entity. So Bike Winnipeg being the advocacy group, and Bike Week being a celebration of bikes. And our goal really, to a large degree, is about bringing about cultural change. So we started with Bike to Work Day. It was focused really on the commuter. And as we transitioned to Bike Week, the whole idea was to connect with the broader audience of everyone that rides a bike. And I think we all know a lot of people ride bikes, or they did ride bikes, and maybe they don't now, or they haven't for a number of years. The pandemic certainly saw a lot of those people come out on their bikes, drag them out of the shed, and get them going again. So, it was a transition to try and connect with a larger audience of riders, and that's really what we cater to. We try to create an event that will cater to all those riders, because we like to say Bike Week is for everyone.
Yeah. Can you talk us through it a bit? I know that there are a number of group rides happening. Can you talk about those, and how do people take part and register, that kind of thing?
Well, for the most part, yes, there are a lot. There are quite a few group rides this year. And for most of them, there is no registration required. The information is on the website, or it's on Bike Winnipeg's website, because Bike Winnipeg is actually running a number of the group rides. Mm-hmm. But there are other group rides happening, such as the one today from the U of W. And so you don't really have to register for them. You just have to show up. You just have to look up the information on the website, bikeweekwinnipeg.com, and find out where it starts and jump on board. I think that they offer an opportunity, especially for those people who are those interested but concerned riders, to get out there in a group and see, in a lot of ways, see some of the options for them in terms of where they can ride and how they can ride. Mm-hmm. It also allows them to connect with the broader cycling community, and that community is a community that is very sharing and very open, and so a good opportunity for them to connect with that community and get some advice, some help, or even in some ways, you might just find someone who lives in your area that you can go riding with or ride to work with. Yeah,
absolutely. I also know that there's scavenger hunts. I was on the Facebook page. Apparently there's a scavenger hunt happening.
There is a scavenger hunt over a 3-day period. To be honest with you, I haven't actually read a whole lot about it because it just got posted recently. But the whole idea of again, moving around the city to various locations and just trying to get people out on their bikes and exploring the city on 2 wheels.
Yeah, absolutely. For you, as somebody who's been with Bike Winnipeg from the beginning, what do you find particularly rewarding about Bike Week? And do you have any anecdotes from people who've taken part? What kinds of things are they saying?
Well, I think the growth of Bike Week and trying to expand to that broader audience, I think is really one of the focuses that we have, and one of the things that really I think that has had some impact in terms of seeing the number of cyclists on the roads today. I think that anyone who rides a bike or even drives a car, if you happen to frequent along routes where bicycles are common, you're seeing a lot more bicycles on the road and on those shared use paths and on the bike infrastructure. You're seeing a lot more of them than you ever saw before. It's been something that's been growing year after year, and I'd like to think that Bike Week has an impact on that, because we do, as I said, cater to everyone, and hopefully we encourage them to, again, explore their city on 2 wheels, get outside of maybe a little outside their comfort zone, or try something new, try something different, maybe ride to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Bike Winnipeg strikes me very much as a sort of a grassroots organization. Where can people go to become members, donate either their time or money, and how can they take a more active role in Bike Winnipeg?
Well, actually, it's pretty easy. You can go to bikewinnipeg.ca and sign up. You can volunteer as well. Come out and help us with some of the rides. So there's lots of opportunities to do that, and certainly you can join. The same applies really to Bike Week. Certainly we've kind of got most of our organization in place at this point, but obviously that's where you can find out all the information. And if you wanted to volunteer during Bike Week, the opportunity has passed a little bit, but but the opportunity is always there to come out and volunteer.
Perfect. Dave, this has been so fantastic to meet you and talk about biking. As somebody who bikes to work all the time and rides on the trails a lot, I want to say thank you to Bike Winnipeg for everything that you've done. And thanks so much for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today. It's just been great.
Thanks for having me.